This screencast is looking at components of fitness. Our study design divides components of fitness into two types: health-related fitness components and skill-related fitness components. Previous exams and previous study designs have split them up into two, these being physiological and neuromuscular. But as I said, the new study design, or the study design we're currently working with, has them as skill-related and health-related components of fitness. The health-related are aerobic capacity, anaerobic capacity, body composition, muscular strength, muscular endurance, and we would normally look at muscular endurance as local muscular endurance, flexibility, and then our skill related being balance, reaction time, coordination, agility, speed, and muscular power. Speed and anaerobic capacity can quite often be seen as very similar. So now to look at each one of these in a little bit more detail. This is just our key knowledge and key skills from the study design. So key knowledge is understanding definitions and factors affecting health-related components of fitness and skill-related components of fitness. Our key skills: to use appropriate technology to perform activity analysis, to collect and analyze our data to determine major fitness components, energy systems used in sporting events and physical activities. So what are components of fitness? They are physiological and neuromuscular attributes that determine level of performance. So if we are better determined to work with respect to our example aerobic capacity, then we will perform better at the sport. Physiological and neuromuscular characteristics common within a sport or physical activity. We look at these with respect to our games analysis. So if we do a games analysis for a marathon runner, we would see that a physiological component of fitness that is very important would be aerobic capacity. If, due to genetic makeup, you are likely to have a good aerobic capacity, that is, that physiologically you are better designed with respect to aerobic capacity, then chances are you'll do better within that sport. So the first one that we're looking at is in fact aerobic capacity, also known as aerobic power, cardiorespiratory endurance. This is the one that people tend to just refer to as fitness. However, when we look at components of fitness, we'll see that there are many other factors that contribute to someone being fit, not just aerobic capacity. Just going to take aerobic power to start off with. There is a difference between aerobic capacity and aerobic power. Firstly, looking at aerobic capacity, it is the body's ability to deliver oxygen, produce aerobic energy, that is to resynthesize ATP aerobically, and remove associated waste products. So that's capacity. Aerobic capacity is how long we can do that efficiently for. Anaerobic power is how quickly we can do that. So if we look at two aerobic runners, one being a 3,000 meter runner and the other being a marathon runner, the intensity of the 3,000 meter runner is higher. The duration of the marathon runner is greater. So, which requires ATP to be resynthesized more quickly? It is the 3,000 meter runner because they're working at a greater intensity. So therefore, aerobic power is more important to them than a marathon runner. The marathon runner works for a greater duration. Therefore, aerobic capacity is more important to them than what it would be to a 3,000 meter runner. So examples of aerobic capacity: our distance runners and our cross-country skiers. In fact, our cross-country skiers are generally the athletes that are seen to have the greatest aerobic capacity. Words that we would tend to use for aerobic capacity would be whole body activities, and they last for an extended period of time. Muscular strength. Now, it's not often that muscular strength is actually used in its purest form in sport, because what we need to see is the definition. Muscular strength is the amount of force that a muscle or muscular group can exert in one maximal contraction. So very few instances in sport where we have one maximal contraction. So some examples in sport, probably the best one is weightlifting, where the idea is to lift in one repetition the maximum amount of weight that you can. Some other areas where strength is important: tackling in particular sports, where you may need to generate a very, very large amount of force to be able to either stop an opponent or change their direction. Or, for example, in sumo wrestling, where you need a maximal contraction to try and move the other opponent outside of the ring or circle. Words to use with muscular strength: we're looking at maximal contraction, maximal force, one contraction. So they're the main words to be using when we're trying to describe muscular strength. Next one, local muscular endurance. So it's the ability for muscles or muscle groups to repeatedly exert a force without fatigue. Now that's not to say that in an activity that requires local muscular endurance that muscle groups will not fatigue, but the more you can work, or the longer you can work at a higher intensity without the onset of fatigue, the better your local muscular endurance will be. An example here would be a timed push-ups test. Now, the reason why you can no longer continue, say in a 30-second or a minute timed push-up test, is due to the build-up of lactate and hydrogen ions. These type of tests are commonly and mistakenly associated with strength. However, you could perform a push-up with a greater body weight, and you can do it more than one time, so it's not a test for strength. The word most importantly used with local muscular endurance is that it is a repeated action. So some examples of local muscular endurance. So here we have an ocean swim. So local muscular endurance, we're looking at the arms with a repeated action. For the swimming, we could look also at the legs, the repeated kicking action. Here we have paddling either a mal board or a rescue board, and again we'd be looking at the repeated action of the arms. Here we have kayakers. Again, we have repeated action of the upper body and the arms using the double-bladed paddles. So again, important word, repeated. Next, anaerobic power and speed. So anaerobic power is how quickly the body is able to produce anaerobic ATP, also that's to resynthesize ATP anaerobically. And speed is how quickly the body can move from one point to another. Now, although a marathon run is timed, we're not looking at pure speed within a marathon. So the speed that a runner over 100 meters runs at is a much faster speed than that a marathon runner can maintain over 42 kilometers. Terms to use here: as quickly as possible. So example here, speed, 100-meter run, anaerobic power, hammer throw. So they need to be able to generate a huge amount of force very quickly. So if they can resynthesize anaerobic energy very quickly, they'll be able to generate a greater force. Flexibility. Flexibility is the range of motion around a joint. It can be static or dynamic. So an example of static flexibility: standing still, how high can you raise your leg and hold it? Dynamic flexibility, from that same standing position, how high can you move your leg in a kicking action, but you don't have to hold it at the highest point. It is the ability to move the body as required to initiate an action or respond accordingly to a stimulus. Now, flexibility, the word that we want to use here is optimal. So to be able to do a split leap, meaning that if you jump in the air, got one leg at the back out here, one leg at the front. Now, that may be an optimal level of flexibility through the hips, hamstrings and quads for a gymnast. However, a 100-meter runner would certainly not want each stride to be a split leap because their stride rate would be too slow. So we don't just look at the more flexible you are, the better for performance. We have an optimal level of flexibility for each particular sport. And the way in which you are required to be flexible will be very specific to each type of sport. So some examples here of flexibility: a split leap, either a dance or a group aerobics routine. Flexibility here in the lower back to go over high jump bar. Flexibility within a diving situation. Martial arts, and a very dynamic form of flexibility going over a flight of hurdles. Body composition is an interesting component of fitness, and we have three main types. We have our ectomorph, we have our mesomorph, and we have our endomorph. The ectomorph relates to how thin someone is. Our mesomorph relates to the muscularity of an athlete, and our endomorph relates to the fatness of an athlete. Each athlete, when we do a body composition test, would receive 3 scores. One to do with an ectomorph rating, one for a mesomorph rating, and one for an endomorph rating. Some examples of where body composition is important, we'll have a look in a sec. But body composition refers to the relative percentage of muscle, fat, bone, and other tissue of which the body is composed. So the way that we look at it is we look at lean body tissue versus body fat. So here are 3 athlete types. We have our small, petite gymnast that would have a fairly high ectomorph rating. Here we have our very muscular 100-meter sprinter, very much a mesomorph type. Our sumo wrestler, who epitomizes the endomorph. Each of those body composition types is vital to their particular sport. Keywords or key phrases to use with body composition, and we tend to look at more our ectomorph or mesomorph. It's not often that we would be asked as to why an athlete would want to increase body weight or body fat. So we tend to look at it in the way that a decrease in body fat leads to a decrease in body weight, which leads to decreased work required of the body, which in turn means that the athlete can run faster, they can jump further, they could throw themselves further perhaps, but with a decrease in body fat they'll tend to weigh less, therefore the body doesn't have to work as hard. Muscular power. This is where we look at it as the sporting application of strength. So muscular power is the ability to move a weight or develop a force quickly. when we look at pure strength, it's the maximal amount of force or weight we can move in one effort. Therefore, it cannot be done particularly quickly. Whereas muscular power, it has to be done quickly. So this is the main concept, quickly, and the word we would use is explosively. Some examples here of muscular power: slam dunk and basketball, a start off blocks for a 100-meter runner, the ability to be able to, say in martial arts or here in Muay Thai, being able to leap explosively, hitting a baseball explosively, try and obtain a home run, and tackling in rugby. Agility. Agility is the ability to change direction as quickly as possible while maintaining balance. So any sport that generally requires you to run, not in a straight line, but to be able to change direction, follow opponents, evade opponents, etc., is going to require agility. So keywords there are change in direction and quickly and balance. This is one where you could almost simply write out the definition. For example, it is important, agility is important for a soccer player because when trying to evade an opponent, they need to be able to change direction as quickly as possible while maintaining balance, that is, without falling over. So here we've got some agility drills running around, not cones, but dummy players in a game of hockey to be able to dribble the ball quickly, change direction so you don't have the ball taken off you. Here in basketball, they're dribbling around someone. Skiing, they're changing direction very quickly, especially if it's a slalom and they've got to go between different poles down the course. And here is just some agility training equipment. Things that require quick footwork. This is a common test for agility there, a T-test. Coordination is the ability to put a number of small actions into one smooth action. So here the example is a fast bowler in cricket. They need to be able to run up, they need to be able to leap, they need to be able to get the arms working in coordination, they need to be able to follow through. So there we have a number of small actions into one smooth. So we can have smooth action or a fluid action. So they're the key words for coordination. Some other examples: coordination, serving, volleying in tennis, being able to run up and throw the javelin. Here we've got an example of someone wave skiing, going along the wave, going up off the lip, turning around and being able to come back out the wave at the bottom. Balance, the ability to maintain equilibrium. So that means the normal state of balance within the body. We have static, which means while still, and we have dynamic balance while moving. So the example here is someone doing a golf swing. Although top half of the body is dynamic and moving, our base of support, our legs, are relatively fixed. So here's some examples of static balance. So they're still, they're not moving. An example here of dynamic balance. There's no way that you could hold a motorbike on an angle like that if you were not actually moving. Here we have an example of an athlete who has lost their balance, fallen over. This is a concept of surfing where we have this massive big keel at the bottom, which theoretically helps keep your balance in white water. It lifts the board up off the water. Reaction time. Reaction time is the time taken to initiate a response from an external stimulus. So we've got two parts to reaction time. We have firstly response time. That's the time that takes from identifying that there is an external stimulus that you need to respond to and actually initiating that response. And the movement time is the time when you first start to move to the point of the event being finished. So for example, reaction time, let's start that one again. Reaction time plus response time equals movement time. So my reaction time here, I hear the gun go, so it goes bang, and I initiate a response. As soon as I start to move, so I'm now running till I finish, so I go past the finish line, that's my response time. Put the reaction time plus the response time together and I get my movement time. So these are really important when we are starting a race, whether that be a swimming type race off blocks, a 100-meter run off blocks, whether you're a Formula 1 driver and you've got to react to the lights, or it could be that you're a batsman in cricket or baseball and you need to be able to react incredibly quickly as to where the ball's going to go. You need to be able to identify that before you can actually appropriately react with a shot. A hint for SACs and exams when you're not given a particular type of fitness component you need to respond to. Where possible, use a physiological component of fitness. So it could be aerobic capacity or power, anaerobic power or speed, local muscular endurance, muscular strength, muscular power, agility, flexibility, or body composition. You will be able to get theoretically a better answer using those than, for example, coordination. Here we're looking at component of fitness, energy system, and associated words. So aerobic capacity, aerobic energy system, long duration, low intensity, and whole body activities. Anaerobic power or speed, we have our ATP-CP system, and again this is from an old one, so anaerobic glycolysis energy system, pure speed, as fast as possible. Local muscular endurance could be either anaerobic glycolysis system or the aerobic system, and we have our repeated action. Now, the local muscular endurance, if you fatigue due to a build-up of lactate and hydrogen ions, then the predominant system is likely to be anaerobic glycolysis. If you fatigue due to dehydration over an extended period of time, an increase in core body temperature over an extended period of time, hitting the wall, so depleting available glucose stores, then the predominant energy system will likely be the aerobic system. Muscular strength is our ATP-CP system. It's one maximal contraction. Muscular power, again, ATP-CP system, and it is an action that's explosive. Flexibility could either be ATP, CP, or aerobic, depends on whether it's going to be static or whether it's going to be dynamic. And we're looking for an optimal range of motion. Agility is our ATP-CP system because we're trying to change direction as quickly as possible while maintaining balance. And body composition doesn't have an associated energy system. And again, looking here at a decrease in body fat leads to a decrease in body weight, which leads to a decreased work required, leads to a faster time, greater height, or distance. Coordination, balance, and reaction time all don't have a particular energy system. Coordination, smooth movement or fluid movement. Balance, we want to be able to maintain balance, so not falling over. And reaction time, we want to be able to do as quickly, or we want to be able to react as quickly as possible.